Okay, we're going to talk about ACT reading, prose fiction passage, Rough Waters. So we got to remember when we're thinking about the ACT is testing close reading, but also fast reading. You have about 8.5 minutes per passage. And honestly, many students won't be able to successfully read and answer an entire passage in 8.5 minutes and have time to bubble. You have a little bit of extra time for 1 minute extra on the whole test for bubbling, which you're going to probably need a little more than 1 minute to bubble well. So for a lot of students, you're going to need a strategy to finish the test. As we're thinking through strategies and these passages, there's two large categories that ACT puts their reading passages into: inference and reference. The one we're doing today is a prose fiction passage. It's over here on the inference side. Prose fiction or literary narrative. They go back and forth. Literary narrative, nonfiction, prose fiction, fiction. And so it's going to be inference questions, but inference is only slightly inference because every answer on the ACT can definitely be supported with evidence from the text. So if you haven't seen me do this passage before, take a minute and pause and read this passage called Summers in Alabama. Okay, so now we're going to do question 2. The narrator considers the weather in Alabama during the summertime to be humid and extremely hot, unbearably hot and miserable. Those two sound the same. Cool and breezy, pleasantly familiar. So got opposites here, right? Pleasant and cool, extremely hot and miserable. Um, if somebody who doesn't read the whole passage, they only read the intro sentences and skim, then they might choose choice H or J based on some of these things we see here: childhood memories, floating in the pond, cool. They're just looking for keywords. They might choose H or J. But if you've read the entire passage, we know those would be the worst choices. So, how do we choose though between humid and extremely hot and unbearably hot and miserable? You might pick up on this word humid, maybe, and say, over here, I see some things that look like humidity. The heat came over me like a blanket, unwashed woolen blanket. So maybe you get the answer by doing that. And you kind of luck into it if you did that way. The real reason comes down to this word unbearable. The answer is not G because it is bearable. The person did not die. They did not turn around and go home immediately. So they were able to bear the heat even though it was hot and miserable. So you have to remember with inference passages, any passage on the ACT, that every answer is supported by the text. So it's only loosely inference. There's 3 strategies I generally recommend in reading. The first is read and answer. If you are fast enough to get through the test, 8.5 minutes per passage, read and answering, it's about 280 words per minute, 100% that's your strategy. If not, you might want to go to this strategy, Google Summary. This is where you're going to read a little faster than you're comfortable with. And you might miss a few things. So you're going to write down 1 to 3 words about what you just read, like a Google search, right? So you only do 1 to 3 words when you're searching Google. So you're going to summarize the passage in 1 to 3 words. Mapping and answering is a strategy we can utilize on the science passages, social science, natural science. It doesn't work as well on the inference passages, prose fiction, and humanities. But it is a strategy we'll talk about with the science passages. Okay, so back to this passage, prose fiction, Rough Waters. This is the passage. Read it. As you read it, I want you to Google Summary, right? So Google Summary, remember, read each paragraph and briefly summarize each paragraph to make you read closer. And also when you're answering the questions, it helps you know where to look back. And here's my Google Summaries. My first paragraph, I said attempt to qualify. Second paragraph, he's alone but unsure. Third paragraph is about the boy cheering. Fourth paragraph, I said he's reflecting. Fifth paragraph is describing the time he got the flag. And this last paragraph, he's describing now, the present. Your words might have been different. The key is to help you recall where to go back when you're answering questions and know what you just read. So now we're going to go to the questions. Number 1, the narrator of the passage can best be described as a swimmer who primarily does he recall, remember, contrast, or chronicle. So I'm going to look in this first paragraph and this last paragraph. The first one, he says, one of my best races could hardly be called a race at all. So I'd say that's really remembering or recalling. So I'm going to get rid of C or D. And in his last paragraph, he talks about the now, how it's what he's doing and how he got to that point. And so I'm gonna go with choice A, recalling the swim of his life and the factors that motivated him during that swim. We could also go over here where he talks about the boy cheering, right? This third paragraph down. That's a factor that motivated him while he swam, but it's definitely A or B. I think if you were uncertain when you get to number two, you might come back and say, "Oh, wait, it was definitely A in the last one," because this one makes you do a chronology of what happens, which means that you're going to know he's recalling all the factors that motivated him during the swim. So this is a tricky question. Number two is, which of the following events mentioned in the passage happened first chronologically? So chronologically means by time, not first in the passage. But we're going to go through each one, starting with F. The narrator stood on the blocks at the Sunday time trial his senior year. So that one is over here in the first paragraph, and it says, one of my best races could hardly be called a race at all. I was a senior in high school, gunning to qualify for the U.S. Junior Nationals. The previous summer, I'd missed the cut by less than a second of a mile. Just the day before my high school meet, I'd come within 0.3 of a second. Okay, so just the day before, and he's talking about what happened his previous summer. So this is sometime during his senior year that this is occurring. So I'm going to put a number 4 beside that one because there's 4 things here, and then we go up and down from there. Then I know he's swimming, so I'm going to go to choice H, which is in the same place. Okay, he swam the 500-yard freestyle. So now he's swimming in it, so that's going to be 5. First he stands on the blocks, then he swims. So that's 4 or 5, so I know that 4 happened before 5. Kind of a complicated question. Okay, G, the narrator leapt out over the diving well in late September. G is right here. Well, that one's over here by the flag, right? And so we're going to pull that one up. That morning swimming, I remembered a day in late September the year before. Okay, so it's a whole year before that happened. So this one's going to be a 3. It happens before he's the time trials. Now let's do the last one. The narrator heard a boy from a rival school cheering. That one's down here, and that's happening in the moment while he swims. So that's 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which one happened first? Choice G, right, is what happened first. Chronologically, not first in the passage. Kind of a time-consuming question. One, you got to pick up on the little hints. Previous summer, late last year. So you got to go figure out what's going on with the passage. Okay, number 3. The narrator describes the natatorium. Natatorium, if you didn't pick up on, is an auditorium for swimming, as being nearly empty of spectators the day of his race in order to do what? So we can look at our choices: illustrate, demonstrate, explain, identify. And over here is where we're going to find it, where he's alone but unsure. The time was still on the blocks. I was not only the only one in the race, I was practically the only one in the natatorium. You hear my dog in the background barking, probably. What is he doing there? Illustrating the perfect racing conditions he had hoped for weren't likely to occur, demonstrating the expectations, explaining to the narrator's coach, or identify why the narrator felt a rush of energy. And he's talking about racing conditions, right? There weren't other people there. He was alone. He dove in. He was angry and disheartened. Those are keywords you pick up on, having missed the cut the day before, and had little belief that I could go any faster today. So he was not in the right state of mind, wasn't the perfect racing conditions for him. Number 4, the narrator indicates that when he swam the 1,000-yard freestyle in the time trials, the world for a moment seemed to. Okay, well, I remember this one. This is when he's reflecting, and it's a pretty easy one to remember. It says, sometimes a moment comes along and the world slows down. So that was pretty straightforward. J, the world slowed down, allowing him to reflect in real time. Be careful with choice H. It's not moving in slow motion, as did everything around him. The world doesn't really slow down. It's just seeming to slow down. Time for him takes a different momentum at that moment. 5, the passage indicates that during the narrator's swim of the time trial, he understood for the first time. Well, this one's going to be here in the now. So what did he understand there? He understood not later, but right then in the water, how little this swim added to the world. Spent more than a year training. When it finished, the world being different. And if no one else cared, the swim was mine alone. It mattered because it was now, right? The swim was an event important to him alone. Great realization. C. Based on the passage, the end, the narrator mentions in line 80. So line 80, that's an easy one to find. Okay. I was out of laters. This was the end, and I made my choice. I cashed in the energy I set aside for climbing out of the pool and unfolding my towel and tying my shoes. So it was his final pursuit of fitness, last chance to qualify for nationals, memory of the final Friday practice, or ultimate realization he defeated other competitors. Well, at this point, he hasn't defeated anyone yet, and it's not remembering Friday night practices. And final pursuit of fitness, fitness can go on for your life. So it has to be G, his last chance to qualify for junior nationals. End of his senior year, junior nationals. There we go. The narrator of the passage characterizes the time trial in Houston. So we find that one over here. It was an informal, unadvertised event being thrown together at the last minute. So D, an informal swimming event put together at the last minute. That one's pretty straightforward, straight from the text. Easy question. The statement, that's where you're going, now hurry up, can most likely be attributed to. This is a really tricky question, actually, and a lot of students who do this one get it wrong. So we find that over here. He squatted low to the water and pointed his finger towards the end of the pool. So this is the boy, he says, from a school I hardly know, right? He says he squatted low, pointed his finger as if to say. This is the tricky part. As if to say means he's not really saying it. The swimmer can't hear it. Okay, that's where you're going. Now hurry up. I thought if he's cheering, maybe I'm close. So it's not the cheering boy actually saying it. So it's not F and G. It's H. It's the narrator as he speculates about what the cheering boy meant when the boy pointed at the pool. That's a tricky question. A lot of students will say G. They're attributing this to the cheering boy because they're missing that as if to say part. For the narrator, compared to practicing the outdoor pool, practicing in the indoor pool is, so this is around line 45-ish. All summer long, my teammates and I swam under an open sky. After this day, we would spend the rest of the season in a dank and moldy indoor pool. Dank and moldy, does not really like it, so the indoor pool is definitely less appealing. When the narrator heard jump in his mind while swimming, he is most likely remembering. Okay, so this is line 67. Okay, line 67 says, now it was March and it was down to my last opportunity, thinking about that day and hearing the word jump. And that day is up here, right? Where he squats low and he jumps to try to grab the flag. So that's what the narrator is remembering at that moment. So his teammates command the day the narrator caught the flag. So F. Here's all my questions answered and annotated. Now on the test, mine would not be this thoroughly annotated because I annotated more thoroughly to show you. But you got to figure out what strategy is going to work best for you to get the answers fastest. If the strategy of Google Summary, as I went through it, as you hopefully practiced it, helped you, then do it. It takes just a few seconds to write down a word or two to know where to look back. If you can read an answer without Google Summary and you save you a little bit of time, if you know where to go, that's great. But you got to have that astuteness and quickness to do it. So hopefully you practice enough to find the strategy that works best for you so you can maximize your opportunities. Let me know if you have any questions.